In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, one God. Amen. Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory forever.
We spoke last week about leaving behind our smaller minds, our egoic and worldly operating systems, so that we can enter into the larger mind, the selfless and heavenly operating system of Christ. So let's explore that through the lens of today's gospel just a little bit. First, I want to read a quote from the great Maximus the Confessor. He was a genius, often very much above my pay grade. Here's the quote. "Grace irradiates nature with a supernatural light, and by the transcendence of its glory raises nature above its natural limits." End quote. So Christ, the very source of grace, lifts the water of the Galilee above its nature, and His human body above the nature of human flesh, and calms the storm with a word, blessing and fulfilling nature to its divine purpose. As He illuminates matter with divine fire, the sacramental nature of the world and all that is in it is revealed. His walk across the sea was an epiphany of sacramental grace. And this is how grace works. It reveals the true nature of things. Bread and wine become Christ's body and blood, and yet remain at the same time bread and wine. Creation is fulfilled by grace and revealed as sacrament. Human beings become divine by partaking of the divine nature, and yet remain human. Humanity is fulfilled and revealed, transfigured in grace. The Sea of Galilee became a walkway and yet remained water. The water is revealed in its fullness as a servant of its Creator. The Lord even now irradiates all things with His grace, all things and all people. As Bishop John put it once, quote, "I believe God is speaking to everyone in the world at this very moment," end quote. We have but to open our minds and our hearts and our souls to the sound of His still small voice and the constant flow of His irradiating love so that we can hear it. As Jesus walks on the raging Sea of Galilee, the disciples in the boat are thrown into confusion, just as we would be if we had been there. Their limited minds could not grasp what they were seeing. They were shocked and frightened, and at the same time enlightened. Epiphanies serve this purpose, to drop kick us into wonder. We need to be awakened from our long slumber, shaken awake by divine contradictions to our normal way of seeing things. Let me tell you a story of a little epiphany I heard about from my dear friend, a priest in the Southwest. A young woman and her husband came to him thinking perhaps to join his church. They were both Orthodox. He had not been practicing, and she had been. She came complete with her head covered, since the parish she had been attending was very strict and rigid, and spoke with him. Her question was this, quote, "Why is one part of the church so rigid and inflexible, while another part is so warm and kind?" End quote. He wisely said, "Stick with the warm and kind part." Then he asked her, "When is the last time you were happy?" She thought about it for a while and said, "I guess when I was a small child running and playing in the backyard." He continued, "Do you have a picture of that?" She replied she would look, and indeed she found one and sent it to him. And there she was, running and jumping and playing and smiling from ear to ear in her backyard. He told her, "That's the real you. Let's see if we can recover it." she heard his wisdom, she and her husband joined the parish. And the husband said, after hearing what Father said to her, "This is the place we should be." This too was an epiphany of grace. Through his wise counsel, she was able to allow the grace of Christ to lift her above the churning water of the trauma that had robbed her of her joy. The truth lies beneath the storm. The calm, happy, joyful, and graceful you is there just below your consciousness, underneath the layers of skin we call the ego. I like what David Bentley Hart wrote about the ego. He said this, quote, "Practically all of us go through life as prisoners of our own egos, which are no more than shadows cast by our souls," end quote. But Christ came to set us free from those prisons, to transform the shadowy and self-centered ego into an instrument of truth and light and compassion. When we pray for captives and their salvation in the liturgy, we are praying for more than those locked away in physical prisons, but also for those locked in spiritual and psychological prisons. One of my spiritual friends and mentors once told me that human beings build their own prison cells, only we are not so good at it. We can only manage to build cells with 3 walls. If we would only turn around, we would notice that the way out is right behind us. The problem is that we are all institutionalized. We don't really want to leave, or even if we manage to, we often go back because the prison is familiar and more comfortable than freedom. Like as it says in Proverbs 26:11, colorfully, I might add, "A dog returning to its own vomit, a fool repeats his own folly," end quote. But we must remember that the destiny of our personal prisons, the storms of this life and its shadows, as well as suffering itself, is finite. No feeling is final, and no situation is forever. Tolkien writes about this in The Lord of the Rings. As Gandalf says, quote, "In the end, the shadow was only a small and passing thing. There was light and high beauty forever beyond its reach," end quote. Grace is an energy of God that lights the way into the kingdom. And let me end with this beautiful quote on contemplation by Anthony de Mello. For this is the way to discover the grace all around us, through contemplation. And he writes this, "Contemplation produces wonder. No matter what it observes, a sunset or a stone, that is the prerogative of children. They are so often in wonder, so they easily slip into the kingdom. And so can we." In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.